Good afternoon and welcome to the quarterly Catskill Regional Invasive Species Partnership Partners Virtual Meeting on December 17th, 2020. I'm John Thompson, the Catskill Regional Invasive Species Partnership Coordinator. I work at the Catskill Center and I'll be facilitating the meeting today. On the screen in front of you is a poster that highlights some of the history and highlights of the CRIS Watershed Stewards program. And on the agenda, we'll have a presentation by Paul Lord on the CRIS Watershed Stewards program. So this poster provides a little primer for the presentation. After the presentation, some of our partners will have an opportunity to give updates on accomplishments this year and plans for 2021. Just a reminder to please remember to mute yourselves, as feedback and background noise can interfere with the others who may be speaking. And I would like to draw your attention to the closed captioning that's available. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a button labeled CC. And if you click on the arrow by CC, you can select full transcript, and the transcript will appear in a panel to the right of the screen. Otherwise, you should be able to see words going across the bottom of your screen. You can turn that off if it's not helpful for you. But I'm happy that we can provide closed captioning to provide more accessibility for more people. And Paul had the idea to do that, and so I'm glad that we can do it through Zoom. So I'd like to start the meeting by having each person introduce themselves. And I'll try to go through the list of the people that I see and call on you. And if you could provide your name, your job, your organization, and if you're representing one, and your location and the amount of snow that you received in the storm. I'd like to do that as a little icebreaker. So again, I'm John Thompson. I'm the Catskill Regional Invasive Species Partnership Coordinator at the Catskill Center. I'm in the town of Watershed today, and we got 15 inches of snow in this storm. I'll go to Paul next. Paul, do you want to give a little, just introduce yourself and then where you are and how much snow you got?
Well, I'm up in Cooperstown and we had 16 inches of snow today. I'll save the rest of my introduction for the presentation.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you. Dan.
Hi everyone, I'm Dan Snyder. I'm the Field Projects Manager for the Catskill Regional Invasive Species Partnership. I'm logging on from Kingston today, and we got probably 13 or 14 inches. I don't know exactly. It was a lot to shovel.
Yeah. Donna Vogler.
Sure, I had to find the unmute. So try to beat my record. So we got at least 26. It's maybe closer to 28. It was very fluffy. So it was a little easier to shovel than many snowfalls we've had. But I took a picture of my yardstick buried in it.
That's great. Thanks. Nancy Allen.
Hi, I'm Nancy, and I'm in the Schoharie watershed, live right on the Schoharie in the town of Hunter, and we got about 24 inches. I'm exhausted from shoveling this morning and glad to be sitting still.
Yep. Thanks for joining us. Next, I see Catherine Scalda.
Hello, my name is Catherine Scalda. I'm the CSBI or Riparian Buffer Program Coordinator at Delaware County Soil and Water Conservation District. I am right now in Livingston Manor, which is Sullivan County. We received, if you're talking about records, I didn't even get close to it because we only received about 12 inches, which to me is really great, although my chickens didn't like it, so I did have to shovel out my chicken yard. So, and my snowblower did work today.
That's good. Next is Ezra Schwartzberg. Ezra?
I'm Ezra. I own Adirondack Research up in the Adirondacks in Saranac Lake, and we got an inch of snow, and I'm really upset about it because I want more snow. But congrats to all of you. It sounds wonderful.
Thanks. Next, I see Brenda Miller. Brenda.
Hi, everyone. Brenda Miller. I work for Cornell Cooperative Extension in Sullivan County. So I'm in Liberty. And, you know, I didn't measure. I did my driveway. I bought a front end loader this year. So it was such a joy not to shovel for the first time in my life. And it still took a couple hours to do my not so long driveway, but I would guess 24 inches. It was super beautiful, and nice to have the sun shining.
Definitely. Thanks. Ryan Moore.
Hi there. I'm in Palinville, New York, and I didn't measure the snow, but it's definitely over a foot. And I represent Mountaintop Arboretum.
Thanks, Ryan. Diana Wiener. Hey, Diana.
Hey, John. Good to see everyone. Diana Wiener. I'm from Sullivan Renaissance, and my husband and I also own a small nursery, Stories Never Sink Plant Company in Neversink, New York. And today we had 18 inches of snow. Lots to clear around the greenhouse.
Yeah, I'm sure. Ian Dunn.
Hello, I'm Ian. I'm a forester with the New York State DEC, and I'm out in Phoenicia today, and we got about 18 inches of snow also.
Great. Tom Elgeier.
I'm Tom Elgeier, the Invasive Species Coordinator, New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets, with barking dogs in the background, I'm sorry. And we got 24 inches here.
Cool. Is that Lauren Henderson?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Henderson. I'm the AIS Coordinator for the Capital Region PRISM. I'm in Amsterdam, New York, and we got, I think, over 22 inches.
Cool. Sarah Coney.
Hello, I'm Sarah Coney. I work with Lord on the Watershed Steward program for the last 4 or 5 years, I think. I think we got about 1.5 feet, maybe more, in Neversink. So it's a good day for a snow day.
Yeah, thanks. Stephen Pearson.
Hello, I'm Stephen Pearson. I'm with the New York State DC. I'm out of the Albany office. I work with the Bureau of Ecosystem Health and Invasive Species. I'm a research scientist, and I'm in Greenville, New York, in the Helderberg, so just north of the Catskills, and we had 22 inches of snow.
Cool, thanks, Stephen. Chris Gilbert.
Oh, there we go. Okay, hi, I'm Chris Gilbert. I am the Regional Landscape Architect for the Department of Transportation in Region 9. And we broke records here in Binghamton. Got about 28 inches at my house. My friends got 30 at hers, and 40 inches is being reported in the news in the area.
Yeah, I heard you got walloped. Well, Brenda can come to your house with her front end loader and deal with your snow. Next, I see Kate O'Connor.
Hi, I'm Kate O'Connor. I'm a rep with the New York State Hemlock Initiative. I'll be transitioning to Catskill Mountain Keeper next year, so I'm interested in the Watershed Stewards program. I'm in Lou Beach, so we're a little further up than Livingston Manor. We got about 15 inches here.
Thanks, Kate. Jessica Newburn.
Hello, I'm Jessica Newburn. I work for the National Park Service on the Upper Delaware Scenic and Recreational River. I am currently in Honesdale, Pennsylvania, and I have not measured it, but it is definitely over a foot.
Thanks, Jessica. Let's see, Mallory Broda.
Hi everyone, my name's Mallory Broda. I'm with the ESF in New York State Parks Watercraft Inspection Program. I'm joining from the Rochester area today, and I'm bummed that we only got about 2 inches.
Thanks, Mallory. Mitchell O'Neill.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mitch O'Neill. I'm with the IMAP team with the New York Natural Heritage Program, and I'm in Boston Spa right now, and I measured 33 inches on my deck, which seems a little bit higher than a couple other people in my area, so I'm not sure why my yard got dumped on.
You're in a hot spot, I guess. And then there's somebody calling in with a 914 number. I don't know if that is somebody we haven't called on yet. Or is there anyone? Yeah, go ahead.
John, yeah, hi, it's Meredith Taylor, invasive species biologist with New York City DEP. And I'm also in Kingston and somewhere around 1.5 feet of snow here.
Yeah, thanks, Meredith. Well, thank you for your introductions. Did I miss anyone? Am I not hearing anything? I want to move on to the next slide. It's great to have people calling from or joining us from different places, and interesting to see what the snow amounts are. I wish we could give out to a prize for the highest snow amount, but I guess you have the opportunity to hopefully go cross-country skiing or snowshoeing or something. So first, or next, then what I'd like to do is just show you the agenda. Hopefully you're seeing the agenda in front of you. So we started just about on time and did the welcome and introductions already. I'll show a slide or two about CRISP, and then we'll have our guest speaker, Paul Lord, who you've already met, talking about, as we said, our CRISP Watershed Stewards program. Then we'll have some time at the end of the meeting for partner updates and 2021 announcements. I made a slide of the bullets that people sent me of events they had coming up or announcements that they wanted to make. And we'll show that slide. And then I know there's other people that wanted to give some updates, and then and I can call on them. And then we'll have the opportunity if anybody else wanted to give updates or make an announcement, then they can do that towards the end of the meeting. So depending on how long that goes, we may run a little bit over in time, but I expect we're probably going to finish up about 3:15, 3:20. So with that, let's see, move into, there's some people that aren't familiar with CRISP, and I know most of you are, but just as a little bit of a primer, our mission is to promote education, prevention, early detection, and control of invasive species to limit their impact on the ecosystems and economies of the Catskills. And on the right side of your screen, you should be seeing a map of the CRISP region. It's about 3.3 million acres, and it includes all of Otsego, Schoharie, and Delaware counties, which are up here, if you can see my mouse. Most of Greene, most of Ulster, almost all of Sullivan County, and then we have a little corner of Orange County. And most of our funding, almost all of it, comes from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. So we'd like to acknowledge the contract that we have with them, and thank them for administering our contract so that we can deliver the CRISP program. We're one of 8 partnerships for regional invasive species management in New York State. So if you live outside of the region that we're showing you, you should have, and you live in New York State, then you are within the area of one of those partnerships for regional invasive species management, or PRISMs. So with that, I think, oops. I'll introduce our speaker. And today I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to introduce Paul Lord. He's a SUNY Oneonta lecturer who teaches biology, ecology, aquatic pollution, marine biology, biological literacy, and underwater research methods. Additionally, he is a researcher investigating the biocontrol of Eurasian water milfoil and evaluating the viability of pearly mussel populations. He holds an MS in operations research from the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, and an MA in biology from SUNY Oneonta. He is a retired U.S. Marine Lieutenant Colonel and a scuba instructor for over 30 years. So welcome, Lord. And please proceed with your presentation. I'll stop sharing and hopefully you can start sharing, Paul.
I'm hoping you can see that. Somebody give me a thumbs up or a yes?
Yeah, I can see your slide.
You're good.
Okay, good. All right. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so the subject of today's presentation, of course, is the CRISP Watershed Steward Program. I hope that I've anticipated the audience correctly. There were some surprises as you all introduced yourselves, but I think that I have something for everyone here today. And of course, I'm showing you what I call a post office mugshot poster board of invasive species that we are currently dealing with. And we'll come back to that in just a moment. As John said, I am a working scientist, and I do focus on the biocontrol of Eurasian water milfoil, and I work regularly. At the same time, we're dealing with invasive species to conserve our depredated pearly mussel populations. The connection between those is pretty simple, really, with the widespread existence now of dracynid mussels throughout New York State and the Catskill region. Our pearly mussels are having even a rougher time than they were with all the other environmental insults that have been thrown at them. John mentioned that I requested captioning. I'm happy that he was able to provide that, grateful he was able to provide that. My nearly 3 decades in the Marine Corps left me with lots of good stuff, but some also not so good stuff, including the fact that I am what is termed profoundly deaf. So having this meeting with captions in many ways is, at this time at least, where everyone is wearing masks, is an assist for me because I'm no longer able to read lips. And I appreciate that. I also want to emphasize what John said. I do not have a terminal degree, so therefore I do not rate to be called doctor or professor, although I've been teaching at SUNY Oneonta for quite some time now. Yeah, so I tell our stewards at the beginning of every season that my mother used to tell me, Paul, you can't do more than one thing well at the same time. Focus and do one thing at a time. Well, I guess I never learned that lesson because I now am asking our stewards to, one, educate the public. And to do that, of course, that means you've got to maintain eye contact and have a conversation with them. And two, inspect their boats, which means that you have to be looking at the boat and the trailer and the vehicle that's towing it and the undercarriage and all the little places where water can hide. And three, be keeping track of the answers to the questions that you've put to the member of the public that you're interviewing so that you can later go back and complete the data entry. So I'm asking them to do 3 things. And of course, in 2020, we decided 3 things wasn't enough, and we threw social distancing and mask wearing into the mix just to keep things even more challenging than they have been in the past. So these are the 3 things that we ask our young people to do day in and day out as they work with the public. That is facilitated by virtue of the fact that we make a connection almost all the time, pretty quickly, because our stewards share something with their customers. They share a love and appreciation for New York State waters. They oftentimes are just so eager to work on the water bodies where they have spent recreational time in the past. And they can relate to the activities that their customers are participating in their water recreation. These are some of the threats that we are dealing with right now. I'm not sure, looking across the diversity of expertise in the backgrounds, I'm not sure how familiar these threats are to everyone, but let me just enumerate them. I don't have time today to begin to do justice to any one of them, but starting at the top and moving around clockwise, we're dealing with round gobies and hydrilla, Asian clams, rusty crayfish, my old friend Eurasian water milfoil, European frogbit, quagga mussels, snakeheads, spiny water fleas. Now we are dealing with fishhook water fleas, not in the region, but knocking at our door, zebra mussels, and the invasive species that probably caught the attention of many of us when first introduced to the concept of invasive species, water chestnut. And of course, there's a bunch more. And we educate our stewards as well as we can in a couple of days training to the threats that each of these organisms pose and to the ways that they are likely finding their ways into our water bodies. The question that's often put to me, both by our stewards and by members of the public, is, well, which one is the biggest threat? And I thank my grandson for this. This is my grandson's depiction of what I say is always the biggest threat, and that is the unknown unknown. That is the one that we haven't anticipated is going to come knocking at our door. That is the one that perhaps, like starry stonewort, is well-mannered, well-behaved, and in fact, rare and valued in its native habitat and is invasive here in North America. We just don't know. So, given the size of the audience, I decided to make sure that I wasn't leaving anyone behind. I have 3 different question slides in here, and I am sincerely looking for any questions that you might have about the Watershed program, its goals, and the threats that we're dealing with. I'll pause for a moment. If I don't hear any questions, we'll move on and talk a little bit about the CRISP WSP's history. Okay. All right. So CRISP WSP, the Watershed Steward Program, was started in 2012. I was scratching my head yesterday, actually trying to remember how the first contract was even solicited. I don't really remember. Perhaps Meredith does. But I do know that we went running up to the Adirondacks, where Paul Smith's College had long been running a Watershed Steward program, and drank from the font there, trying to co-opt, steal, borrow everything that was transportable back down here to the Catskill region. When we started in 2012, the program was one where we looked to educate members of different lake associations, watershed protection organizations. And we started out with a very limited number of partners. Up by Otsego Lake, the village of Cooperstown hired a handful of stewards at the urging of the Otsego Lake Association and some other green organizations up here, the Otsego County Conservation Association. And that was our program for about the next 3 years. In 2015, unfortunately, at the same time as the CRISP contract was lapsing and was being re-advertised and awarded, New York State DEC put out a call for proposals looking for someone that would manage stewards at, actually it wasn't managed stewards, would provide projects that would thwart aquatic invasive species. And we proposed the purchase of boat washing equipment and the hiring of stewards for Canandaigua Lake and Otsego Lake. And because CRISP didn't exist at that time, at the time when we had to put the proposal in, OCCA, and we're grateful for that, put that proposal forward and administered the grant, working with the towns of Springfield, the village of Cooperstown, and the Canandaigua Lake Improvement Association, which here on out I'll call CLIA, because CLIA is one of our long-term partners and real heroes from my perspective. So that worked pretty well for the northern part of the region, didn't do anything for the southern part of the region. There was already some questions about why was it that all of this money was going to the northern part of the CRISP region and none of it was going, for instance, down on the Delaware. Very good questions that we couldn't answer. And we continued to work with the National Park Service down on the Delaware and any volunteer organizations. We had lake associations that would work with us. But we had no paid stewards any place except in the northern part of the region, other than National Park Service stewards. At the end of that 3-year contract, New York State DEC, in a more coordinated fashion across the state, awarded a number of contracts for aquatic invasive species spread prevention. And SUNY Oneonta bid on that contract, and that contract is called the CRISP AIS program, which is different from, but absolutely integrated with the CRISP WSP program. So contractually they're separate, but in fact there's no way to separate one program from the other and have a viable program, in as much as the CRISP WSP program provides for equipment and training, and the CRISP AIS program provides for salaries for our stewards. And as soon as that contract was awarded, the folks over at Canandaigua Lake, CLIA, the folks at Springfield, the folks in Cooperstown, who previously had paid stewards working at their locations, wanted to know, what was going on. Initially, Canandaigua Lake was not included on the list of sites that DEC wanted us to staff, as was also the case for the town of Springfield. Cooperstown has a long history of partnership and agreeing to disagree with DEC. And frankly, I believe the thought was that they were being punished for some of these prior disagreements when they lost funding for their stewards. Well, the good news about that contract, that AIS contract, was that it allowed us to hire 24 full-time CRISP AIS stewards. And each year we propose to DEC locations for staffing by those 24 stewards. Because the 24 stewards are supposed to be full-time, and life being what it is, folks just don't have the opportunity to work 40 hours a week, even though they intend to. Oftentimes, we usually keep 2 or 3 part-time stewards on now too, in order to ensure that we use the hours that were allocated to us by the CRISP AIS contract. We have worked with DEC from the first year and with New York State Parks so that we can place 1 steward at Canandaigua Lake, and CLIA continues to fund some stewards at Canandaigua Lake with funding provided separately by CRISP, very much appreciated by all of us. And that has allowed Canandaigua Lake to provide the lion's share of data submitted by the CRISP region for the Watershed Steward Program. Between our AIS steward and the CLIA paid stewards, Canandaigua Lake submits at least 1/3 of all data consistently that coming from the CRISP region. So in recapping here, we've had 3 different contractual arrangements over the course of our 8-year history. We have 1 year left on the current contractual arrangement in which we have a contract both directly with CRISP, which is the Watershed Steward Program, and with New York State DEC, which is the CRISP AIS program. Are there any questions on the history of our CRISP WSP? I hope I was able to make that somewhat clear. Any questions at all? No, okay. So hearkening back to my Marine Corps experience, generals like to talk about tooth to tail ratios. They're always concerned when the logisticians and the administrators appear to be outnumbering what they call the shooters, the guys hauling the rifles. And I've taken that kind of a perspective with me in running this program. And we're pretty happy with our tooth to tail ratio. If the shooters are all the people in the tan box at the bottom, and we certainly hope they are, those are the folks that are actually doing the job. They're out there asking those questions, educating the public, doing the inspections, and collecting the data. Then the folks at the top are our overhead. We are the logisticians and the administrators, with some assistance clearly from the head stewards. What I'd like to do is point out that everyone in the tan box is seasonal. And so we only pay them for the seasonal work. They are hired in April, trained on a few weekends there. They begin work at the end of May, and they work through to the middle of October. after Labor Day part-time because most of them are students. And then we let them go. For the rest of the year, we have the two of us working part-time to ensure that we're ready for the WSP in the next year. So we're thinking things look pretty good. We're pretty happy right now with the way the program is going. We've learned a lot over the years. I've spared you all the details about the incremental improvements that have come year by year. Right now, we are focused on 10 sites along the Susquehanna River, if you count Canandaigua Lake and Otsego Lake as sites on the Susquehanna River. We have 7 sites along the Delaware River, the West Delaware. And those are mostly sites used by fly fishermen, but we have other recreation going on there, including float trips and other forms of recreation, up to and including motorboats. And then we have a potpourri of lakes and ponds scattered throughout the rest of CRISP in the counties that have a little bit less presence: Schoharie, Sullivan, and we actually have sites in Orange County and Greene County as well. So these are our manned sites, or the sites that we manned at least in 2020. We're still pondering possible changes here, but for 2021, the changes are going to be pretty minor. We're still finding our way around Schoharie County, and I'll get back to why we might be moving around there, as well as some of the places along the Delaware. Actually, moving some of the places, period. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the tools that we try to provide our stewards. When we first put our stewards out there, I'm ashamed to say that we sent them out there with a handful of rack cards, a head full of knowledge, a yellow t-shirt, and pretty much nothing else. And some of our stewards were quick to let me know that there were some tools that would enhance their effectiveness. And I'd like to believe that we've listened to them. We've also learned from other programs. And so I don't believe there's anything here that's spectacularly unique, but I do believe it's pretty comprehensive. We take a look at a steward that is well equipped for their job, and you'll note that they have on their yellow crisp AIS t-shirt, but since this particular steward is an AIS paid steward, they have to wear as their outer layer the New York State DEC boat steward vest. And so Johnny here is wearing that vest. We have long touted the effectiveness in the absence of hot water, high pressure boat washing equipment of solutions, in particular potassium chloride, which is backed up by a little bit of research done at the Biological Field Station here in Cooperstown. But we also, knowing that people are not familiar with potassium chloride, we recommend that they make a choice of a AIS killing solution of either potassium chloride, sodium chloride, which they're familiar with, but they know is corrosive, vinegar, which they're certainly familiar with, but they know smells, and bleach, which they know is a biocide, but they also know will stain and discolor their clothing. We provide dunk buckets, not shown here, but those dunk buckets typically are holding 15 to 20 gallons of water. And we mix up the solutions in that, and we use those dunk buckets to kill any potential AIS hitchhiking in PFDs, swim gear, anchor lines, whatever like that. We use AIS provided, DEC provided AIS towels, and we have spray bottles. Most stewards this summer had spray bottles with vinegar, Clorox, and then hand disinfectant. So we have a number of spray bottles. Okay, the table. By having a display table, it gives our stewards a place to work. Notice the book open here. The book open here because Johnny was working at a site that is not busy consistently throughout his 8-hour shift. You can see that he was sitting here reading. He has a bunch of AIS educational materials in that box there. You notice there is a little write-on-wet notepad that he used to take notes for his data entry when it's raining out. A chair, of course. We provide each of our stewards with a sandwich board, which provides immediate identification of what the function of the steward and the steward station is, a rake and a pool skimmer so that they can clean the water access point of floating plant material or anything else, garbage or anything else that might be in the water right there at the water access point. Our stewards are also enjoined to clean up the water, the area surrounding the water access point throughout the workday. Finally, in 2020, we had all the PPE that you would expect us to. Oh, there's a spelling error. That's supposed to be face shields. Yeah. All of the PPE that you might expect us to provide our stewards who are working with publics, many of whom did not take the requirement for social distancing and the use of PPE seriously this summer. Our AIS stewards were certainly the backbone of our effort, but they by all means are not the total effort. We have a variety of partners. I've already highlighted the Canandaigua Lake Improvement Association, but the Village of Cooperstown continues to provide us facilities and maintenance for the boat washing equipment. The town of Springfield provides us facilities and coordination with their waterfront program at Springfield Landing. The Otsego Lake Association provides us an immediate way of contacting the membership of the Lake Association, representing lake stakeholders all around Otsego Lake. Canoe and Kayak continues to send their staff to our training and uses that training at their facilities, 3 different facilities in the upper Susquehanna. National Park Service hosts us every year for training, and their interns and staff then use that training to educate the public about aquatic invasive species. Otsego Land Trust, particularly in their site at Brookwood on Otsego Lake, continues to be involved with our training and sends their interns each year to the CRISP Watershed Steward Program training so that they might integrate those messages with the messages that are central to the Otsego Land Trust mission. We, of course, continue to work with the DEC. Our coordination with DEC is monthly over the summer season, and a formal coordination. Informal coordination happens almost on a weekly basis, particularly with the need for PPE this summer, but also the provision of training materials, surveys, questions and answers, both from them to us and us to them. I tell our stewards that doing those three things is oftentimes difficult. That's a tip of the hat to my still persisting mother. But it's also an acknowledgement of reality, particularly so when things get busy at a watershed program access point. So you might recall that those three priorities were: one, educate the public, and then two, do the inspection, and only third, do we get back and do the data entry. Unfortunately, the persisting record of our effectiveness is the data. And those data are insightful, as you'll see in a moment. But the data were not reflecting well prior to 2020, the work that our watershed stewards were doing in the CRISP region, because many places in the CRISP region were not, our stewards were not boat stewards. I object to the term boat stewards, which is used widely across the state in lieu of watershed stewards. We're making some headway with that. But the fact is, in the CRISP region, lots of people recreate in our rivers and streams in particular without boats. And even those that do use lakes and ponds oftentimes are doing it with canoes and kayaks. They're paddlers or using floating equipment down the Delaware. And so the boat steward questionnaire oftentimes was a misfit for the work that our stewards were doing. At our continued urging, DEC this summer, 2020, implemented a fisherman survey that we prototyped for them in 2019. And across the state, that's finding widespread acceptance. And based on that survey, a different region proposed a walk-up survey, which we found, surprisingly, was well utilized in the CRISP region as well. And so these are capturing folks that are recreating on the water and might actually be responsible for the transportation of aquatic invasive species from one water body to another, but without boats. When we first started in 2012, the document that you see on the left-hand side was our state of the art. I was quite proud of that, spent a good deal of time putting that together based on the work that had been done in the Adirondacks and up on Lake Ontario and a couple of other places, and trying to make sure that it fit for our Catskill region. But I'm just bemused to even look at it now when I consider where we've come with the Watershed Steward 123 app that is used across the state now. And that app it ensures careful editing of the data as the data are entered. We used to spend untold hours at the end of the season trying to figure out the scribble on those paper forms and trying to figure out which round lake, which mud lake the last water body visited was, because there are untold numbers of them across New York State. And that just doesn't happen with the new watershed inspection survey. When those data are collected, we have consistently, year in and year out, then use them to examine the last known water body. We do this to try to understand which threats are looming. I mentioned fishhook water fleas early on in the presentation. Well, if you take a look at the Delaware River and Sullivan County DEC launches, and you take a look at Canandaigua Lake, you'll notice that both of them are accepting boats from up in Lake Champlain, with the fishhook water fleas are widespread. We just recently had our first experience in the Crisp region with the quagga mussel. And it really should come as no surprise to us, because for years now, we've been looking at boats arriving from outside of the Crisp region from water bodies that have been infested with quagga mussels. So our stewards were well prepared to recognize quagga mussels when they saw them. Trying to summarize our program over the last 8 years in a 30-minute presentation is a challenge. I'll throw those particular factoids at you as way of contrasting where we've started to where we are right now. We're certainly hoping to continue to grow. We're hoping that our surveys increase, but I'd really like to engage you as an audience on here this afternoon is the question of what is the best measure of our effectiveness, and where should we be placing our stewards? So we're talking about here are the metrics that best measure our steward effectiveness. When programs first start out, and I am reminded of that because a number of the prisms across New York State have just started watershed steward programs in the last year or two, I hear those eager, enthusiastic voices managing those programs talking about putting their stewards where they can garner the largest numbers of interviews of 1, 2, 3 records. And I have to admit that when we first started out, we thought that that was the best indication of steward effectiveness as well. If we could go from 1,500 records to 2,000 records, well, that meant that we were obviously doing a much better job. But is it, if when moving from 1,500 interactions with the public to 2,000 interactions with the public, that plus up of 500 are repeat interactions? And maybe not just a second interaction with that member of the public, but a third or a fourth interaction. When you actually listen to the conversations between the stewards and the members of the public, those repeat interactions are some of the most obviously ineffective interactions. They still result in a record that gets put into the tablet, that ends up in the database, but the interaction, frankly, is handled like this. Hey, John, I see you're back again today. When was the last time you were here? Friday, right? No, actually, it was here Saturday. You weren't here Saturday. Oh, okay. So you've taken care of everything on that boat, right? Oh, you bet. I've learned my lesson. Everything is clean. I've checked it twice. We threw a little bit of that potassium chloride in the bilge. We've drained the outboard. I'm ready to launch. Okay. I've got another customer here. data is entered, but is that really an effective interaction? In a perfect world, I would say yes, because we want to keep reminding that customer of their responsibilities. But we only have 24 full-time stewards, and we have a slew of unmanned water access points throughout the CRISP region. And so I have been pushing our team leaders, much to the annoyance of our managers up in DEC who try to keep track of where we're putting these stewards. I have been pushing the team leaders to identify new locations where we can increase the number of first interactions. Now that probably is going to result in a decreased number of steward to public interactions, but I am confident that those first interactions are the most meaningful ones. I don't believe any member of the public captures the full sense of responsibility that we want them to have with just one interaction. Probably the ideal number of interactions in any location would be 2 or 3 over the course of the summer, depending on the member of the public. But after 3 interactions, that member of the public is either just turning a deaf ear towards us, or they're telling us that they're on board and they're doing what we want them to do. And so it is time for us to move on. I'm interested in your thoughts about how we should best employ the next steward. Are we doing enough? I've already mentioned that quagga mussels are now in Otsego Lake. Oh, what a day it was when we realized that we had quagga mussels in Otsego Lake. And then, as if that wasn't humiliating enough, when we went out and actually sampled for them, we came to realize that quagga mussels have been in Otsego Lake for at least a year already before we even knew they were there. That is, that's professionally embarrassing for myself and for the biological field station. So are we doing enough? I'll tell you, again, with 24 stewards, you cannot man every location where people are coming into our water bodies. Most of the folks that are listening here this afternoon know that dracinid mussels, their larval form, are microscopic veligers that when you look at a little bit of water, you can't even see them in, which means that a very likely scenario for the introduction of these quagga mussels from wherever they came into Otsego Lake was that they showed up on somebody's car top transported kayak that was moved from, I don't know, one of the Finger Lakes or up on the Erie Canal into Otsego Lake, possibly across private property. We're never going to have enough stewards to police everyone. So we have to do a better job of educating the public about the consequences of inattentive actions, particularly with kayaks. I believe kayaks far more so than canoes, but canoes with flotation forward and aft are also great transportation vehicles for the veligers of dracinid mussels. I'd like to finish up by noting that this is the final year of the AIS contract, is also, I believe, is the final year of the Catskill Center's CRISP contract, and DEC has expressed to us their desire for a single invasive species coordinator. I can see lots of different scenarios, but the one that seems to make the most sense to me is that the folks down at the Catskill Center propose for their follow-on contract that they up their staff with a full-time watershed steward coordinator, and that they continue to use SUNY Oneonta for their seasonal program. Somehow we'll coordinate what gets done on the off season there. That's something for those of you that are on the CRISP board to ponder, and I'd be very happy to discuss your ideas for how that might work. Oh, I'd like to wrap up with a couple of recommendations. For those of you who've been on the CRISP board for a couple of years, the first recommendation shouldn't come as any surprise, because it's a recommendation we make every year. I'm still hoping to see that happen, and that would be a January contract. January contract would allow for a much smoother start than we've ever been able to provide for the warm water lake recreation season. It allows us to order materials earlier. It allows us to hire quality young people, as opposed to hiring later in the spring semester when a lot of the good talent have been hired by other organizations. And finally, it allows us to update our educational materials earlier, because we could hire our team leaders to start working on those educational materials much earlier than we've been able to. And then something that we've been looking for the last couple of years, we've made progress with boat washing equipment. We have used the infrastructure at Canandaigua Lake and in Cooperstown to provide boat washing equipment in a very cost-effective fashion, but we need to have one portable system, at least one portable system, in particular for down on the Delaware, but also for other locations in the CRISP region for special events and for demonstrations, so that people will understand why this is the gold standard for disinfecting towing vehicles, boats, trailers, and engines as we move along there. That concludes what I thought I might be able to talk intelligently about in 30 minutes. I'm hoping that some of you have questions now, since you all held your questions when I requested them before.
Thank you, Paul. That was great, and I hope that people have questions. I thought it's really interesting, especially all of your presentation was interesting, definitely, but especially about the metrics and about keeping track of the number of interactions with one person. That's really important, and we struggle with that in all of our programs. I think how to best measure our impact to change behavior of people, so that they're not moving invasive species or not helping in their spread. But it sounds like you were indicating it would be great to keep track of whether there was one interaction with that person, or two or three, or more than three. So that's a really interesting way to look at that.
Yes, it would be another question on our tablet-based data entry, but I believe it would be insightful, and it might spur the initiative to overcome the inertia of staying at the place that we've become comfortable with. I must tell you that when you suggest to team leaders and stewards that they pull up their comfortable situation and move off to a new location, there's most often head scratching. Sometimes there's actual resistance. It's like, hey, we've got a routine here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Sarah just responded to Tom Elgeier had a question in the chat. Sarah, do you want to
yeah,
respond to that?
I'm not seeing chat, so let me see.
Oh, it's Tom said, do the Chris Boat Stewards also ask about accidental transport of spotted lanternfly on trailers and boats? And Sarah said, yes, we always talk to our stewards about that during training.
Yeah, we do, and we provide them literature. But I have to tell you, that is what oftentimes, from our perspective, works more effectively than any amount of literature are specimens. We provide spiny water fleas. We provide specimens of hydrilla. We provide fishhook water fleas this year. We provide our stewards with quagga mussels as well as zebra mussels so that they have something more than that piece of thin cardboard. And I am still waiting for someone to share with us some preserved specimen of the lanternfly egg cases so that we have a feel for how they look in 3 dimensions and their size. But yes, we are sharing literature with them, and we have not identified a single one to my knowledge yet.
Yeah, I don't know if Tom is able to jump on, but yeah, that sounds like a good idea to, if we were able to provide specimens to the Watershed stewards. I know that I think we have some from the IPM program. I don't know if there's anyone on the call that could speak more about that, the ability to get specimens.
Hey, John, it's Tom Elgeier.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
For egg masses, it's very difficult because we wouldn't want to accidentally transport a viable life stage, and then there's a huge variability in color, texture, size of the egg masses. So just providing like one egg mass, even if it's been rendered unviable, wouldn't really work well because they'd be like, oh, it's too light or too dark, it's textured enough, it's too smooth. But there's so much variability in the egg masses that it's really not feasible to do that because it's almost everyone is slightly different than the others. So.
Well, you're the expert. I've already admitted to the fact that I still haven't laid eyes on any myself. I will tell you that our stewards have lots of time on their hands, particularly midweek, and they could be doing a very good job of examining all of the trees and infrastructure around their water access points. But I think we need better materials to guide those searches. And I'd be very willing to sweeten the pot with with some kind of bribe for superior service if they were able to actually help your effort.
Well, one of the things we're working on, I was going to talk about later, is a means to make survey grids available to the prisms. We're working with the folks at IMAP, Jen and Meg and Mitch and others at IMAP to make survey grids that are available in a GIS format compatible with IMAP invasives. So you can make available certain grids, whether they're around boat launches or parks and things like that. There are some interagency issues there with, assigning land, not signing, but making available parkland that's state parks, that's really a state park issue. Same thing with DEC land, so we try to limit it to, county and local municipalities. But that's something that's in the works and hopefully be end of January, February. So there is hope with that. So I was just curious. I know some of the boat stewards do it more often than others. Just checking in on CRISP to see it. Hopefully that their stewards were also doing that. It's great news to hear that they are. So,
well, look at that lay down for the CRISP region, and I'm telling you that we could put our stewards to work, but we need better materials to guide that effort.
Hey, Paul, this is Meredith.
Yes, Meredith.
Thanks for the great recap, and sorry for the stressful early years. It was all very thrown together there in the beginning. But I just wanted to mention with the repeat visitors for DEP, that was a real deterrent for us to continue our participation in the program, since we were finding that virtually all of our survey or all of our inspections were repeats, and we really had like the same 10 people coming every weekend. So I'm interested. I've heard from the Lower Hudson Prism that they've had some roving stewards that have moved around to different boat launches, and what you think about that and how that would work in the Catskills if there were more roving stewards available to move around to different sites throughout the season.
Actually, so when you look up in Schoharie County here, we're showing you Looking Glass Pond. We actually have 3 different locations that we have kept one of the stewards working at this summer. A real eager, focused, enthusiastic, don't waste my time kind of steward, which can be challenging, but it's also so rewarding working with that young lady. She flat out told us that I am wasting my time. And I'm chuckling because at the same time that she's telling me this, I have been talking to DEC over the last 2 summers about why we wanted to keep our stewards moving around. But we finally got permission from DEC to move her from Looking Glass Pond to 2 other alternate locations in Schoharie County, where she knew she was being more effective because she was having more of those first encounters. She figured that out herself, working there in a period of 6 weeks, where Meredith, I've got to say that I didn't even start to thinking about this maximizing first encounters until you pulled DEP out of our CRISP program. And yeah, that didn't sit well when it first happened, but on reflection, it was pretty obvious why you were doing it. It made sense. And it was after I realized that, it was okay, let's move on. Let's believe that DEP with their fine boat washing and licensing program has done what they need to do, and let's move on to the places that are not as well controlled. That was the first time that we started to ponder whether maximizing encounters was actually the right metric. So yeah, roving stewards, I believe that is something that we want to be doing. And I've already mentioned about Schoharie County. When you look up at the area between Sydney and Cooperstown, we actually have about 4 or 5 other sites there that we send folks to periodically, just to make sure that we're not missing opportunities for first encounters. So we are doing that to some extent, but to this day, I still get a slight bit of pushback from DEC because they want to know where the stewards are because they want to be able to tell the public where the stewards are, as if that would direct the public to where the stewards are. I'm not so sure that people are actually signing on to DEC's website to find out where a steward is to go have their boat inspected. I don't think that happens too often. I might be wrong, but I don't think that happens too often. So Meredith, you're right. I believe rovers are the way to go. I'm not saying that we don't need to focus on the high volume locations. Canandaigua, interestingly, our most high volume location, also has the most first encounters. I'm confident of that. We get people that show up there all the time from crazy places that we've never seen before. It just happens because it has a launch site where you can launch or retrieve 2 boats at a time. It has a big parking lot. It has all those New York State Park facilities that invite people to use it. It shows up on both DEC and Parks websites. It shows up on the CRISP website. It has all of the advertisement that any launching facility would want if they were looking to maximize launches. So it has to be a combination of roving and focus on high volume sites. Anybody else have any thoughts on the metric issue? As John knows, he's been looking to up those metrics every year. He talks to us about, well, you've met this threshold. Why can't we say that you're just going to be able to do that next year? Yeah, well, this is one of those reasons I'm not so sure that that's the way we want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. I think we're going to have to leave it there, Paul. I know I have a lot of additional questions, so we'll have to do this again, I guess.
Yeah.
But you and I can chat, and I think it is a great presentation. It's great to hear how the program has grown, the lessons you've learned over time, and how the program is working now. So thank you, Lord. I appreciate your presentation today. And like I said, we'll do it again. It's always good to check in with you to see how the program's going.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about our program, and thank you for your focus on the Watershed Steward program.
Yeah, well, as you know, this is a tremendous program, and we hope to continue to support it in every way that we can.
Thank you.
Going forward. So thanks. So since we're going on in time, I wanted to move on to our next segment, which is just a few updates from CRISP, and then some of our partners had submitted some updates and announcements that they wanted to share. So I can be brief with the CRISP updates. I just wanted to give a shout out to my colleague Dan Snyder, our field projects manager. He's been implementing treatments of Japanese Angelica tree and woodstock and black jet beet and Warsing this fall. He's been working on that. And to date this year, we've treated over 105 sites in the CRISP region between CRISP staff and the Catskill Center's Catskill Strike team. And those include both tier 2 species, or the early detection rapid response species, and also more common species that the Catskill Strike team is working on. Dan has surveyed 7 out of the 10 hemlock monitoring stands, and his field work is ongoing. And he's observed higher densities of hemlock woolly adelgid in the central and eastern Catskills than we have for several years now, and lower densities in the western Catskills. One other highlight I wanted to point out is we've done outreach, mostly digitally and remotely, to over 1,300 people that have participated in our programs this year. So we hope to be able to continue these webinars and our remote partner meetings into next year. And then hopefully at some point we can get to meet back in person again. I wanted to draw your attention to the slide in front of you. The last two CRISP partner virtual meetings are recorded and they are on our website. And Paul has agreed that he has no objection, even though he's very camera shy and doesn't like to speak very much. He doesn't mind us recording this presentation and putting it on our website. So that address is in front of you. Just wanted to point out so we can start planning for it. The New York State Invasive Species Awareness Week is going to be June 6th through the 12th in 2021. And that also corresponds with the Play Clean Go week. So I hope that we can have some events during that week. At least we can have remote events. The Catskill Science Collaborative, which is housed out of the Cary Institute of Ecosystem Studies, has posted the presentation that Kelsey Parker did. She's a student at CUNY. She's looking at using remote sensing to monitor hemlocks in the Catskills. So if you haven't seen her presentation, if you didn't see it live, you can see it at this address here in front of you. Maybe if I have a minute, I'll try to paste these into the chat so it would be easier to copy. And then the Catskill Science Collaborative also has requests for proposals out right now for graduate fellowships. But if you have a graduate student and you want to get them some funding to do some work in the Catskills, you need to do it quickly because I think it's the end of the month is the deadline for proposals. There are a few proposals that I've been talking to people about on working with invasive species in the Catskills. So hopefully we'll be able to continue that partnership and continue to help support graduate studies in the Catskills. Ryan, do you want to talk about the Mountaintop Arboretum if you're still on? I have put up your programs for the Mountaintop Arboretum. I don't see Ryan here anymore. So I'll just go over them. On January 23rd, there'll be a Houseplants by Design with Tova Martin at the Mountaintop Arboretum. They'll have a Winter Tree ID on February 20th, a tick awareness workshop on March 6th, and climate change conversations on April 3rd. I would refer you to their website for more information about those. And the next event we have on the slide is the IMAPS. It's a joint program from IMAP Invasives and the Department of Ag and Markets. And Mitch, do you want to talk about that first? And maybe Tom could add on to it if you would like.
Sure, that sounds good. So I'm Mitch O'Neill with the IMAP team at the New York Natural Heritage Program. So we've been working with Ag and Markets to put on this webinar to focus on how you can identify and report spotted lanternfly and tree of heaven, which is the preferred host species. This is a really high priority species right now, as I'm sure many of you are aware, especially in the CRISP region. We just finished scheduling it, so it hasn't been widely announced yet. But after the holidays, you can expect to see some social media posts and everything. But for now, we just wanted to at least mention it to everyone gathered here today because it's such a high priority in the CRISP region. And one of the key things we'll be covering in the webinar are these a map of priority grid cells for surveying. And I think Tom mentioned that he wanted to say something about that, so I might let him give some context for that.
Sure. So the grids that Mitch is talking about are survey grids that are in our Survey 123 program that we're using for spotted lanternfly survey, but they're going to be overlapped with IMAP invasive ArcGIS layers so that we can make available some of those survey areas to PRISM staff and others so that we can better direct resources. So we're limiting gaps and then kind of eliminating overlap, things like that. Better direction of resources is really what we're looking for, so that we're not falling short in some areas.
And I forgot to mention, you can register for this webinar at nyimapinvasives.org/training, and I'll also put that into the chat box.
Yeah, sorry, if you couldn't see this slide before, Dan, let me know that you may not be able to see it. Can you see the slide of events now? Okay, Paul says he can, so great. So there were some other people that had some updates. Brenda Miller. Brenda, do you want to say? Do you have something that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I mean, thanks, John. I just wanted to share, and it's a good time after Tom and Mitch that last year we had put in a proposal for Chris from CC Sullivan to do some workshops around the county about spotted lanternfly, and since then it's become even more important. So I'm hoping that we can revisit that proposal and form some volunteer crews to actually do the surveying of these areas that you all are designating, and to help out with that, to do the IMAP trainings and take folks out to those areas and do some surveying. So that's, I mean, John and I just started talking about it, but we'll say more later. Thanks.
Thanks, Brenda. Yeah, I hope that we can use the grid surveys as a way to get to what we want to look for in the spotted lanternflies. Stephen Pearson.
Yes, hello, John and all CRISP partners on the call. Thanks for having us today. It's been a great meeting and an interesting presentation on the Watercraft Inspection Steward Program. So on that front, I'll report on some AIS-related information statewide. This summer, this past season, the statewide Watershed Inspection Steward Program had 349,502 inspections statewide, with greater than 450,000 interactions with the public. All that work led to greater than 19,000 AIS interceptions, most notably of hydrilla at 2 locations, at least one in Lake George and one in Lake Ontario. The CRISP program that Paul spoke about provided many of those interactions and leads in terms of interactions with anglers, that are in the Delaware River, like Paul was talking about. The having a robust AIS program that's able to focus on both the Watercraft Inspection Steward Program as well as monitoring and control is important. Statewide and within CRISP, the European frogbit, water chestnut, and fanwort are impacting regional lakes and ponds. The AIS programs could also assist with eDNA monitoring efforts in the future. In addition to that, and on that front, within CRISP this summer, there were northern snakehead documented in the Delaware River in the Callicoon region, and we did do some eDNA surveys as well as electroshocking for snakehead in that region. Finally, on the aquatics front, DC has recently finished putting together a new aquatic gardener's guide. So it's available currently as PDF and can be printed by the user if needed. So if anyone would like that, please contact me and I can get you a copy of that new Aquatic Gardener's Guide. From a broader Bureau statement, the invoice reimbursements have continued to be delayed, but they are being paid, and they're being paid with interest. So there's, I guess, that benefit. The new RFP for the Catskill Prism will hopefully be offered in the first quarter of 2020. So I know that John and Paul had both spoken about that. So it should be coming out in the first quarter. And that's essentially all that I have to report. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Thanks, Stephen. So you were saying that the RFP will come out in the first quarter of 2021?
Correct. It's in the works and should be out in that first quarter. Yep.
Okay, excellent. That's good to know. So I do have a question, Stephen, about I think you mentioned there was eDNA work done looking for the northern snakehead. Have those results come back, or you're still waiting on the results?
Yeah, so we're still waiting on the results. I did recently speak with the Lamar Northeast Fisheries Lab, who are analyzing those results, and they're next in line. So we should have the results soon. In addition to the samples from the Delaware River, we also had a report, seemed credible report from Rockland Lake along near the Hudson River in the lower Hudson. So they're analyzing all of those samples at the same time, and we should have results from that in the near future. The eDNA surveys on the Delaware corresponded with fish in hand. So we know they're there, and the eDNA surveys would be a proof of concept at that location. So that's where we are in the eDNA front with the northern snakehead from this summer.
Do you think, are there plans to do additional eDNA surveys in 2021 and maybe other reaches of the Delaware or tributaries?
Yeah, so it's still a discussion between the region and central office as to what work in terms of documenting snakehead distribution in the Delaware and further movement upstream. So it could potentially include eDNA work as well.
Okay, thanks for the update. That's I know there are a lot of people that are obviously very interested in that. Thanks, Stephen. Does anyone else have any other updates they'd like to share right now? Otherwise, is there anything else that you wanted to add, Paul?
I just want to comment, maybe say what's obvious, that this eDNA work is a tool that we've long needed, and it's going to provide great service to our efforts in terms of focusing stewards where they need to be and focusing the message as it needs to be. So we're appreciative of it.
Yeah, that's a good point, definitely. And hopefully we'll be able to expand eDNA sampling and other sampling in the future. So if anyone has any other updates or anything they'd like to add.
John, this is Tom Algeier again.
Yeah, Tom, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, I keep peppering you with stuff, but
no.
I did have you've kind of touched on a couple things I was going to include in my update, so I won't repeat those. But I think everyone, at least in the CRISP region, has probably already heard from the press release that we do have spotted dragonfly in New York. which includes Ithaca, Orangeburg, Port Jarvis, Staten Island, and Sloatsburg. Orange County being, in your area, so that's relevant to Chris by all means. But we've also completed our yearly cooperative agricultural pest survey. I know you were involved with the planning meeting. So the 18 target species were surveyed for throughout the year by our horticulture inspectors and supervisors, and all the CAPS targets, the 18 targets for 2020 were negative. So that's great news that those 20 invasive species that we do not have here in New York were not found. Also negative survey for box tree moth, and the grape commodity, orchard, and stone fruit commodity surveys all were also negative throughout the state. Unfortunately, we did find soybean cyst nematodes in 12 counties. I don't have the list in front of me right now, but they were kind of scattered throughout the central part of the state. And we did have one velvet longhorn beetle not too far from Crisp. That one was in Westchester County. That was our survey for the year. Asian longhorn beetle down in Long Island. We did recently have one more find. It was within the quarantine. It was an older exit site. So it's not a new infestation by any means, and it was within the quarantine. But the ALB program is continuing on to survey. Our plant protection quarantine partners from USDA have not been participating due to COVID, but our horticulture inspectors, when it's safe to do so, are out there surveying, and the survey is continuing on there. And I've already mentioned spotted lanternfly more than enough, so I will shut up at this point, unless anyone has questions.
Actually, I have a question about spotted lanternfly. Do you have the updated map on your website, or where can somebody find an updated map of where spotted lanternfly is?
I believe I emailed you a link for the most recent update, which was this, but that can be found on the Northeast IPM. If you Google IPM spotted lanternfly in Cornell, the page will come up, and the map is one of the many resources there. The most recent map is from December 7th. There was one previously on December 3rd, but it was updated slightly to include, I believe, Ohio.
I'd like to take over.
Sorry. I think
traffic noise is not from here. Sorry.
Yeah.
Dogs, yes. Traffic, no.
Sorry about that, Tom.
Right.
So yeah, and if I can, I'll put it on our website if that's okay. If we put it on the CRISP website, I can add
absolutely
information that we have. Okay.
And the best way to report it is still spotted lanternfly at New York State Department of Agriculture. The reporting address has not changed.
Yeah, and we have that on our website too. So hopefully, if people know where our website is, they could find it quickly when they need to. Thanks, Tom. I really appreciate that update.
It's bad news for the most part, but at least there was, I peppered it with some good news. So.
Yeah, well, we've been expecting spotted lanternfly at least to spread. So, and you've been working your butt off to keep track of that and do the surveys. So that is very much appreciated. Plus doing all the outreach and all the amazing things you do. Thanks. So does anyone else have did I miss anybody for updates, or did anyone else want to add anything to what we said? I did want to just mention that we are planning to do some strategic planning for CRISP in 2021. And we would like to include some presentations on what we're protecting, our accomplishments in this contract, and opportunities and needs that we have going forward. That'll be part of our strategic planning. But other than that, we should probably wrap it up at this point. And I would like to thank you all for joining us for the CRISP Partners virtual meeting. We offer these meetings quarterly, and we'll announce our next meeting on the PRISM listserv, our Facebook page, and as an event on our website. So thank you very much, Paul, for your presentation. It was excellent, and I learned more and more about what you're doing. It's really been great to see the expansion of the program and the growth of that program under your leadership. So, and for everyone else, thank you for joining in. I hope everyone has a safe and happy holiday season, and I look forward to seeing everybody in 2021. So take care, and we'll see you later. Stay safe.